Most communication fails because people aren't communicating well with themselves. They hold themselves back and they don't feel like they can say what they really think needs to be said.
Hey, welcome back to the Culture Works podcast, where we explore the leadership practices that power high-performing teams and enduring workplace cultures. I'm Chester Elton, and I'm joined by my brilliant co-host and co-author, Adrian Gostick.
Hey, thanks, Jess. We're so delighted today to be joined by somebody who's quietly and powerfully transforming how teams communicate. Molly Tschang is a leadership expert and founder of Abella Consulting, and she helps senior executives around the world say what needs to be said skillfully. And that's no small feat. So, Molly, welcome to the Culture Works podcast.
Adrian and Chester, delighted to be with you today.
Always fun to spend time with Molly Tschang. By the way, Molly is also the founder of It Skillfully, Inc. She's worked with Fortune 500 leadership teams, coached CEOs, helped some of the highest high-performing executives align around trust, collaboration, and courageous conversations. She has a podcast that has earned a loyal following for its real talk approach to help professionals at all levels. Adrian, what would you add to that?
Well, today, Molly's got a new book out with all of our mentor, Marshall Goldsmith. She's going to tell us about, and we're going to unpack how leaders can create psychological safety, which we're all trying to do. I think Chess, you and I are especially interested in navigating high-stakes conversations. Everybody we coach, every executive we coach is trying to figure out how to have these difficult conversations. And one of the things Molly says she's going to do is avoid the tough stuff that actually moves teams forward. So how you avoid having those conversations, because we've got to be able to break through. So let's dive in. So Molly, let's start where it all begins, trust. You say this is foundational in your work with senior leadership teams. So where do you see trust break down? What are the early warning signs that leaders might be missing regarding trust?
Yeah, there's lots of those. I would say first and foremost, vulnerability is a must for trust. And I even wrote this in the book. You mentioned that word, particularly with senior people, and they would rather clean toilets than be vulnerable. So it really is something that we need to come to grips with. We're never going to love it. There absolutely is a judgment call in how we share, but we have to come across real and we have to be real. I think to your question about signs, I think, this notion of sidebar conversations, I love that. We have a big meeting and then we have all these follow-on sidebar conversations, okay, which are fine. But then you add it up. Like, could we have said that in a room when we were all together and bubbled up the disconnects, aligned and worked through them together and left on the same page? That would be ideal. And then a lot of places, no, we'll just all nod. And then afterwards, Chester runs around, talks to Adrian runs around, talks to Molly. And then we come back around in full circle and 2 weeks have gone by. So I would say that is clearly one. And then, I think that the subtle of, well, over there, they didn't. I would call that, no one's trying to blame, but it's always easy to point the finger out there. Like, this is going on. I'm kind of a little bit a victim. I think that's a second sign. And then I think there's this just not so subtle. And Marshall talks about this all the time. It's like, so-and-so just needs to be right. And you're like, we all want to be right, but being wrong is how we learn and grow. And I think that those are not the easiest tendencies for senior people because, you don't get there by being wrong all the time, right? You do, on balance, want to be right more often than not.
So the sidebar conversations, I'm curious. I want to dive a little deeper on that one. So when you know that's going on, how do you stop it?
So I think the first thing is you might know it's going on. And other people might not go on, but everyone doesn't know that everyone knows what's going on. And this full transparency is a big deal. And this is not something to overlook. The think that, well, everybody knows that. Okay, well, let's put it out there, right? In the next meeting, I know I had a conversation with so-and-so, and so-and-so had a conversation with such and such. And so what do we think about that? So just forget solving it. Let's just put it out there like, hey, we're owning it. So what's up with that?
Yeah. Is that part of when you talk about when communication isn't intentional? That's one of the most common mistakes leaders make when they're trying to foster that whole collaboration. Are those conversations what you call intentional conversations?
I think that it's no one's intending to not move as fast as we can, to be upfront. They're not saying, well, I want to lie and I want to hold back, right? That's not what they're saying. However, the habit which is very normative. I mean, I say the sidebar, you're like, oh yeah, sidebar. Everyone's having sidebar conversation. That's become the norm. And so that idea of culturally, you guys are in the culture works, that's our cultures. We're all nice together. Heaven forbid I tell anyone what I really think. And I think part of that is also just the skillfulness to say, when you tell people what you really think, that doesn't mean you're making them wrong. It doesn't mean you're aggressive or otherwise attacking anybody. So I think there's these norms that we think about that saying, wait a second, I use the word conflict and I'll ask, what do people think? Is that a negative thing? And so many people raise their hands as negative. Conflict is conflict. If you want to make it negative, that's absolutely you're right. But I want to offer to people, be aware of the assumptions you might be making. And again, this gets to everything about myself is communication with others starts with being in good communication with yourself.
So last night, making dinner, the Office, the TV show The Office is on the background. Michael Scott gets in, our favorite wise leader gets into the Toby's HR files, and he decides he's going to fix all the complaints that everybody's had with each other. And of course, it blows up. Everybody's mad at each other. And so you're talking about kind of this idea of, bring them to the surface, but a lot of leaders get nervous about that. So I love this phrase, say it skillfully, which is, the title of your book. Break that down for us, because there's got to be this balance, right? Between, you're just, well, I'm blunt, I'm honest. No, you're jerk, versus also being a little honest, right? So what does this mean in practice? Say it skillfully at the executive level.
Right. Well, I think at all levels, it is finding your authentic voice and learning how and when best to use it with confidence, with clarity and impact. The end. And it is a life-changing skill. And it's the number one success factor, both at work and in your life overall. And we're not taught it. You're just not taught, whether it's in middle school, whether it's in high school, college, or the workplace. How many decades of corporate training have I had? But none of it was, how does Molly speak up in a way that's true for Molly? Because I'm different than Adrian and Chester. And so you could say things in a way that I can't, and vice versa. I get why it's hard to train, because it isn't a one-size-fits-all, which is why I was so excited about the book with Marshall, because we have a very simple framework that we believe everyone at any level can apply. But I think that it's kind of recognizing that your communication is how other people experience you. It is you. And it's worth investing in. I think that's my message to folks. For your own sake, as much as for your ability to relate well with others and to perform at your best.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of the communicate well, skillfully, and be authentic class that I took at university. I don't think that was offered.
Yeah. It wasn't even an elective, okay? I want to change this, because it makes, I said this so many times, work is not that hard. It's all the annoying people we work with that are hard, okay? It's not the work. The work itself is quite easy. So I think that ability to embrace each other, to really relate at a human level, which both of you do so naturally in your own selves. But for a lot of people, it's not the easiest thing. It's a little scary sometimes, because getting to know ourselves sometimes is really not the most fun thing, because we got to own a lot of stuff that maybe we're not so proud of or wasn't so great.
Well, Adrian touched on this a little bit, the directness versus diplomacy,
Yes.
blunt, being a jerk, because we're really afraid that we're going to damage relationships. You talk about not at work, also in your personal lives. I mean, we're thinking, okay, I need to have this conversation. I really want them to know how I feel. And yet, if I do it that way, I'm afraid they'll never talk to me again. I'll blow up the relationship. So you're all about finding that right balance.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing you're going to say it's different for everybody, and yet you've got a framework.
So here's what I would say first and foremost, and this starts with the self, but that awareness of, have I created an either or? I'm either direct or I'm diplomatic. I mean, I'm like, okay, who said that was like gravity, right? I mean, I don't see that. So first of all, realizing, why do I think it's either or? I would say it's always both. And I think that idea of like, what's going on for me? So you noted, Chester, if you're afraid, so first thing is, hey, I'm afraid of something. Don't make that wrong or bad. What am I afraid of? I'm afraid someone's just not going to like me. Okay, so because you're helping someone to grow, because you're bringing something up that will help the company be better, like, let's talk about that. Are they really going to hate you for the rest of your life when you're trying to help the company be better, or you're trying to have a better relationship with them. And so that's where I would say to people, some of this fear we manufacture. Well, Chester doesn't want to hear it. I'm like, I don't know. Chester works pretty hard to do the right thing for this company. I think that he would be open if there's inadvertently something he was doing and he wasn't aware of, and you could help him. So I think this is a real grown-up conversation with ourselves, because it's far easier to say, they don't want to hear it. My boss doesn't want to hear it.
Yeah,
Right?
I think the key word there is grown up. I think, it's hard for us to be grown up sometimes.
Well, it's assuming positive intent too, which is what we talk about, right?
All the time. So this is where I would say effective communication, it starts with how we communicate with ourselves, which is to say, am I modeling what I'm talking about? So that notion of positive intention, which sometimes takes some courage because it feels scary. You're like, for me to think, well, it really seems like they're trying to do blank, blank, blank bad thing. When if you say, I'm sure that deep down they want to do good things. I say this to employees all the time. I mean, does your boss fly out of bed every morning and say, I'm going to be so scary. No one tells me what I need to hear. That is not how they jump out of bed. Sorry. That's just not it, right? So I think people realizing we are all people. Granted, we're at different levels. We have different impact. I get that. However, we're human to human. And so I think that ability, which both of you excel at, is looking at the person, not program manager 1 or tech lead 2, right? But hey, who is this person? Have I invested time in getting to know them and them getting to know me so that we can respect and appreciate each other? We don't necessarily even have to like each other. But those are really fundamental things that kind of help people collaborate well at work to serve the greater good, because that's what we're all about.
So give us a real life example, Molly. Don't name names, of course, but let's take this from theory to practicum then, and tell us about somebody maybe who used some of these skills and has shifted the whole team dynamic.
Yeah. So I have a game changer with an executive, so a leader who was constantly not saying what he thought he wanted to say with the CEO of a company, and, went through a process. He was realizing that I'm creating this fear of this person, putting this person on this incredible pedestal that's unreachable for me. And I don't know why I'm doing that. It literally, so this gets to more than the style of communication. It gets to like, how am I relating with where I am in this universe? Am I giving myself the credit? I mean, I would say to most people, you're in that job. You're in that job because you deserve to be in that job. Okay, maybe there's a small percentage of you that are way over your head. Okay, but most people are in a job. And by the way, we're all learning and we're all making mistakes. That's super normal. And so I watched someone literally give himself permission to play big, to say what he thought needed to be said. And not shockingly, of course, the CEO thinks this is fabulous because that's why they're paying the executives the big bucks to come up with ideas, to disagree, to push back, to give different points of view. And just the most game-changing part was that relationship in the self of just feeling like, wow, here I am, filling the shoes in the way I want to fill them. And then, of course, with that attitude, being able to contribute more fully and helping the team. And that example, of course, for other people, because I get it, CEOs, it seems kind of scary. Like, oh my God, they're perfect and they're constantly judging me. And they're people too, right? And they're demanding, as they should be. But they know that mistakes happen. They don't want the same mistake to happen twice. Just note to self, we don't want to be doing that. Okay. So that to me was a picture perfect example.
We often have, you do a lot of coaching. We do a lot of coaching. That executive presence comes up all the time.
Yeah.
And is that the one mind shift you'd say that really makes the big difference? Is I'm deserving of this job. I actually am confident. I'm confident and I have good ideas. If you were to point to that one mind shift, would that be it, or is there something else you have in mind?
So so there's a whole book on executive presence. They broke this whole thing down, and I think that lots of times people use that like, executive presence, and like I'll know it when I see it. I'm like, dude, that's not helpful. I'll know it when I see it.
Yeah.
And so I would offer to folks that the real challenge is getting to know yourself for who you really are. And by the way, we're changing every day, so that's an ongoing thing. But being whole with yourself and when I say getting to know yourself, some things you're great at, some things you're not very good at, okay? And being whole with yourself, understanding how can you contribute to serve the greater good and making sure that other people know how you contribute. And then the things that you're not so great is being open about that so that a team can come around and bolster any weaknesses on the team so that we actually have 1 and 1 equals 11. And I think that idea of executives being grounded in themselves. When I think of an Alan Mulally, when I think of a Gary Ridge, when I think of a Harry Kramer, they come across, and they are grounded in themselves. They don't think they're perfect. They are good. They know they're good, okay? But they don't have to tell anybody they're really good because they just are. And so I would say that ability to stand in my shoes as me, to recognize, the things that I might shine at and the things that I don't, but to not berate myself, because I think people being their worst enemy is just like the worst. You've seen it. You're like, what? Why are you so hard on yourself? I mean, you're like a superstar. Yes, there was a 1% mistake where it's okay, right? But I get that, because also that isn't a habit. When you focus on the things that you're not so great at and improve them, that is how you succeed. So there's a tension there, and it's just balancing that tension for oneself, I would say.
I like what you said about they're good. They know they don't have to tell you they're good. Whenever you have somebody really building themselves up, there's some issues there. My dad used to tell the joke about the guy at the bar, trying to make an impression. When he finally turns to this girl he's trying to impress, he says, well, that's why I think I'm great. Why don't you tell me why you think I'm great?
Yeah. It's exactly right. It's exactly right. And that less is more notion, the 2 ears, the one mouth.
So coach us up here a little bit. Okay, so Chester and I, when we were back, about 100 years ago, when we were back in our corporate world, we had a really difficult kind of, leader that we worked with. And we had to work with this person. And very political, loved to be crafty and try and, and the side talk was throughout that he loved the sidebar conversations and meetings, and he thought that's what work was. It was manipulating others, and, thought he was a puppet master. And so, Chess, I'm probably not giving all the background, but this was a tough person to work with that Chess and I had to work with. When you face a personality like that really is not, you're not going to be able to go in their office and say, hey, you're being a knucklehead. They're not going to change. So how do you work around that and move from, because at that time we became very reactive versus being proactive. So help us, coach us through that process if we were back there.
Yeah, let's take 3 levels. So first, for folks who really have someone who doesn't want to hear what anyone has to say, just says, do it my way or the highway. And that is legit for that person if they happen to be the leader, their decision maker. You have a decision. And is that, do you stay? So forget about being skillful with how to handle it. So I just want to encourage to folks, and hopefully it's a very small percentage, but if that is the case, I would ask you to figure out, why are you there? I'd love you to be in a place that you could spread your wings and fly, right? So let's take that aside. I think the next thing is, if you have someone who really, 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 you're like, this guy is just cement, okay? It's never going to change ever, okay? So then I think you're in a little bit of that, I'll use the word manipulating, because you're just trying to make it workable so that we don't want to kill ourselves and we still get some work done. So I understand that. And I think that becomes very clearly, how do we establish what serves the organization, which will then make that person look good, and helping them see that what we're doing ultimately helps that person look good and helps the organization. And that really is depersonalizing at times. And that language can be, rather than you, it can be, hey, the situation requires this. It can be a very subtle shift, but it takes it from being very personal. I would offer that I think many people in those who come across that way deep down aren't that secure, okay? Because if you're deep down super secure in yourself, you don't really need to go through all of that, frankly. So we have compassion, because we have all been there when we're not so secure. And sometimes we pretend that we're super secure, and in so doing, it's just not a good look. So I would say show compassion and then try to serve the work the best you can. I'll take the maybe the middle road, which is someone just never has really had someone care enough to be able to point out that this stuff is backfiring a little. And so that is a judgment call. But to the extent that you have street cred, you can go and say, hey, look, I love you to pieces. I love working here. I think what we're doing really makes a difference for the world. I've noticed something, and it just might be something that you're not noticing. I think this little shift could make a big difference for you and for the work. Can I share it with you? And you can see how they, but I think if you show that vulnerability, because you want to be the person you would want someone to be for you, because we all have those moments where we come across this or that and people are like, Molly, come on, honey. Like, what is up with that, right? You don't want them to roll your eyes and say it's hopeless. You want them to say, you know what? She just needs a little help. Maybe she needs tough love. Maybe she needs a kick in the butt. And I would offer this is the be part of the problem, be part of the solution. Okay. You can let it go, which is okay. I'm not saying that you have to do something. I need you to own that then you're perpetuating the problem. That's your decision. Or try what you can to be part of the solution. May not work, but you go to bed at night thinking I did what I thought was right to the best of my ability. And you sleep well.
Yeah, but Molly, you're talking about being the adult in the room, and I get everything you said, and it is wonderful advice. Our solution was sort of the Bugs Bunny one. We just wanted to drop a piano on him. That was gonna be our solution. And yet, I will say that, you know what, Adrian, if we'd had Molly giving us advice back then,
I was just thinking that.
it would have gone a lot better. It would have
Yeah.
gone
So for folks, 79% of relationship issues are perpetual. So people aren't going to have a lobotomy. However, we can manage them in a way where we can collaborate and kind of get around ourselves so that it works. And that's really the goal. We're not trying to have perfect beings. We're trying to say, how can we figure out, given the kind of quirks and dynamic and habits of people, how we can all kind of figure it out.
Hey, let's shift to like culture, coaching, and inclusion, right? Inclusion is that word that gets tossed around a lot, right? But you talk about it through the lens of voice. So can you share how leaders can create that space of dissenting views without losing that alignment?
Yeah. So I have to say, this is another one. So that idea of having, disagreement and alignment, like that, you don't have alignment. It's okay. Okay. So people should never we're not trying to air discontent and disagreement and think that we're aligned. We're not aligned. Okay. And that, I think, is a really permission. Oh my God, can't bring this up. It's like, hey, we're not on the same page. It doesn't mean we're bad people. It means we think different things. Likely it means we have different bits of information. So we're coming to different conclusions because not everybody has all the relevant information, which is this number one thing of transparency is our friend. And so I think the leaders who can really help folks realize that, hey, I hired you guys. You guys are all here for a reason. You're all superstars. You're better than I am, right? And the way we're going to get to the best solutions is if everybody feels comfortable sharing. So I believe this and I want this. Now, I need you to act on this. So you tell me, am I doing things that make it hard? I need to know. And so the leaders, and when someone tells you something hard, it says, well, Chess, last time so-and-so told you something bad, like you ripped his head off. And so the rest of us were like, we're not going there.
Never, right? Ever.
So leaders need to realize you can say all you want to hear something. The minute, and I've heard leaders say this, someone comes to you with something tough, and then the first words out of the leader's mouth are, who said that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. And so now I'm just like, note this out. Everyone within earshot and through any building is like, don't do it.
And they don't believe you if you don't tell them who it is. So
and they don't believe it. That's right. And so I think, so someone might say, well, what do I respond? Say, I would respond and say, really? And I would just pause.
Wow.
Because and what happens is people try to respond, big mistake. Work with the emotion at the moment. Really? Say, so I was hoping that you would realize, we share that it maybe wasn't the easiest thing for me to come here and tell you this. And that I'm telling it to you because I think it will really help us do better work. And obviously the person who said this wasn't comfortable coming to you. So I'm coming to you. Okay. I'm not saying this has to be done in a mean way. It's just whatever can be, because, and again, I'm assuming that this person wants to do the right thing, but these are built-in habits. I get it. I've worked with someone for 40 years, right? Who really had this really kind of an issue and everyone hated it. And I'm thinking, well, what did you do? And they're like, oh, nothing. So I'm thinking after 40 years, it's not as easy to change, folks. Newsflash.
Right.
So helping someone nip it in the bud, catching it, assuming the positive intent that they want to grow. That's all. Grow. Okay, well, if they really don't want to grow, let me give up. I don't know what to tell you. So I think you can't have it both ways.
And and all three of us, we've had to deliver that news numerous times, right? In our careers as executive coaches. And inevitably, when we do that, typically it may not go over well. And like you said, they want to know who said it. And I love the pause. I love what you're suggesting there. Because inevitably what I find later, whether it's 6 months or a year later, they'll come and they'll say, you know what, you were right. But I wasn't listening at the time.
That ability to set the stage in advance, I call this, when times get tough, how are we going to handle it? And it's better to talk about that in times of peace versus the times are tough. And you kind of work it out and say, hey, I imagine that over the course of this time with you that I'm going to get some stuff that I don't think you really want to hear. I need you to know that I'm going to share it with you in the spirit that it will help the group, in the spirit that I know you really do want to grow. So let's talk about how you're going to handle that. Because what I don't want to think is like, oh my God, I got to tell him this. He's going to have a hissy fit, not going to talk to me for a week. I said, you can say, I would rather avoid all that. Your call. Let's talk about that because I think this is an opportunity of growth. And by the way, we're modeling the kinds of conversations that I want to help you become well equipped to do with your people, and then they can do with their people. Because this is how culture moves through an organization. That makes sense? So I want to offer to folks, there's these moments where you're in it, like crap, they're a minute. Ideally, we've thought about it proactively. And like, what are some of the things that we want to have happen? So you talked about debate and dissent. And so it might be, hey, we're going to have meetings. And every single meeting, I expect people to come up with different points of view. Like, so if we're all agreeing, I really don't think this is worthwhile having a meeting. Let's just not waste anyone's time. I want you to come in with different points of view just to help us hone. Maybe you don't fully believe it, but there's an angle that we might have missed. See, like what I'm saying? So the leader's normalizing that. And then when that happens, hey, way to go. I love that we followed up on that. Reinforcing the positive behavior is what we all know this. I mean, like it makes sense, but people don't often do it.
That's the problem everything you're saying is exactly right. And probably most leaders will be nodding their heads and saying, absolutely, those guys need to do that. I'm really good at this.
Exactly. It's exactly it, Adrian. You nailed it.
And then I'm seeing these, I'm replaying these moments in my head where, we're giving the feedback to a leader or a team and they're going, yeah, that's not us. And they're living, and I want to come to culture because they're not living in alignment with what they say their culture is. And it's sort of like everybody else do it, but, we're about openness, but we don't share anything or, very little. We're about accountability except for ourselves. So how do you get everybody, rowing in the same direction culture-wise and use these skills you're talking about?
Yeah. So I think first, a culture starts at the top. And so I think for these leaders we're working with, and anyone working with Chester and Adrian is blessed. Okay. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
And I think that ability to really be a mirror for those folks. So perhaps they said something and you think, obviously you're not being transparent. Obviously you're not modeling X, Y, or Z. And say, hey, I'm noticing this, whatever they just did. Right. And maybe it's not as open or what have you. And see what they say. Because you got to walk through, they're not where you are. And so I think people assume, so I'm noticing that. Okay, so they're with you, right? And as I understand it, one of the 5 parts of the culture is transparency. Help me understand, how is that transparent? Right. So you're not digging in, but you're just curious and you're just trying to, and so what happens is they're just going to the water. They're like, wait a second. Yeah, so my concern is I really think for this culture to be credible, you modeling the culture has to be credible. So for me, it's a little bit of a disconnect. I don't know. That might be how it lands for people. What do you think? What I want is and we need our leaders to be credible and to be walking the walk. And and they all want to do that, by the way. It's when they're not doing it, they don't realize it. That's where you guys come in. Right. And so then they're like, okay, so what needs to happen?
I like the way you tie it back to the core values and stuff, because that's coming from the CEO and should resonate, right? But what do you do when the CHR vote, right? And we've all dealt with those, right? Says our culture feels polite, but not real. What's your first piece of advice?
I love this one because I actually have a few clients that are like that. So I think the thing is just, again, rather than solve, because what people say, well, I think this is what you should do. How about, wow, fascinating. Like what makes it polite to you? Because people have different levels of polite. Polite in, some parts of the world is full on belligerent parts of the world. So what makes it polite to you? So you're starting to have them articulate what are the behaviors, what are the words, what are they noticing, what are the actions? Because those are the things that we can affect, right? It feels polite. I don't know, like, what do I do with that, right? And then specifically get, kind of, so I hear this and that. So what's the impact of that? What do you think would serve, not what do you want, but what do you think would serve the organization? So you're getting them, you're doing much less work, and you're getting them to kind of help you get more information. And so what I'm hearing is this, have you thought of that? Right? So enrolling people in that change, because what happens is like they're polite out there. You're like, I'm fine over here. Like I know what to do, but they're all polite out there. And so that's kind of their problem. And the message would be like, okay, you're part of this too. And so you need to realize that it's not them, it's we. And so your ability to be part of the system is huge, because that's all part of the problem, all part of the solution, part of say it skillfully, right? Don't be like, it's all over there, man. If they just did that, they're gonna be all great. Like it's never that way. It lives in the system. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, Molly, we're in the lightning round wrap up. Okay, so don't overthink this. I got 4 questions for your rapid fire.
I'm ready.
Who's your favorite hockey team?
Oh, it's got to be the Devils, because you're on the call with me. Hello.
That is the right answer. Okay, the real question. One leadership principle that has never failed you.
That's easy. Lead with love.
Lead with love. Love it. A book that shaped how you think about people or culture.
Oh my God, from a million years ago. And I actually sat at a dinner next to Joe Torre. And he wrote a management book, a little paperback with a blue cover. I think it was like Ground Rules for Winners. And he just talked about, he has a whole team of freaking superstars dealing with Mr. Steinbrenner. And I just had so many epiphanies from that book early on, very early on.
Excellent. Last question. Finish this sentence. A thriving culture is.
A thriving culture is where we win as one. People speak without fear and feel heard. Work together to make good ideas great, let go of what doesn't serve us, and create extraordinary value and meaning in life.
Okay, Molly, this is a tough one. If you have 30 seconds, which I know we would never use, but 30 seconds to fix a toxic team, where would you start?
That is an easy start. I would ask the team members on a scale of 1 to 10, how wonderfully are we collaborating as a team? 10 could not be better. 5 might be 50%, 1 might be 10%, and just see what they say. Well, I really had to learn the hard way this one leadership lesson about needing to be right. And this at one point cost me my job. And that ability for me to actually see what was going on and to really show some humility, but rather I acted out fairly aggressively that everyone else was the problem and certainly not me, in a very accusatory, if not even blaming sort of way, which I would offer is really not consistent with who I am. But at that time, I think I was feeling very insecure, obviously, and rather than having the maturity to admit that, I really kind of lashed out in a way that was really not appropriate. So a good lesson, a tough lesson, a painful lesson.
I had a boss who said, I would admit when I was wrong if I were ever wrong. I remember back in 2005, I thought I was wrong, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
You know?
It was a Thursday. It was, yeah.
I think for folks who have some of those really tough ones, it can just be, the only thing I could offer is like, wow. So that's a bit of fascination. And what would you like me to do with that? Or, interesting, how do you think I feel hearing that? The extent to which we can encourage others to even potentially think about what it's like for other people, much less actually go there, right? For some folks, the dysfunction happens because it's hard to get out of our world. Like, this is what I think, this is where I am, this is how I feel, and we're just stuck in it. And so that ability to transport ourselves into the potential space someone else is at is really a huge, huge capability.
I love that question. So what do you want me to do with that?
Yeah.
You're right. I'm wrong. I get it.
So here's what I might offer, and I'll get you guys input. I think what I would say is, when I talk to folks, it is shocking to me, the vast majority of folks who really don't feel like they can put it out there at work. Yeah. Right? That's just, and then I would say to our senior most leaders, here's the deal. Your payroll is your number one expense by a long shot. You're paying a fortune and you're not getting full value, not because people aren't working hard, but because they don't feel like they can put it out there and say it like it is. And it's costing you. And rather than have mass layoffs, I would encourage folks to really consider, how can we empower people to say what needs to be said so that we speed our decision-making and execution and get to our greatest outcomes.
Yeah, in our book, All In, we found the number one complaint of leaders, this comes to your work, Molly, is we don't collaborate enough, we don't communicate enough. I mean, that's what it comes down to in most cases when culture fails.
Yeah. And it's not, I would say it's not rocket science. It's also data doesn't drive behavior change. We can show that we should be eating, more fruit and vegetables, and we should be exercising more, and we should not smoke, and people smoke and don't eat well. So I think it is about an individual realizing, carrot or stick, whatever motivates you, to make a change. And to the extent that people embrace that as individuals and together for those organizations, the sky is the limit. And with your work, that's the culture everyone wants to be a part of, right? Where I can be who I am, I can spread my wings and fly, contribute fully. And those are the places that don't have recruiting problems. They don't have retention problems, right? Everyone wants to go there. They don't have to win big marketing competitions about being the top this or that because they're just good.
Yeah. And to your point, data doesn't change, behavior. What's the old saying, Adrian? 87% of most statistics are made up on the spot.
We get calls sometimes from reporters saying, "Hey, what's your fresh data on this?" It's like, I'll give you the latest data, but it doesn't change. It's been the same for the last 7 years.
That's right.
This
That's
is
right.
how people feel.
That's right.
And 87 sounds like you really thought about it. Like they're actually...
It's not 90.
Yeah.
Well, the Gallup research has, whether it's 80, 85, 87, it's an incredible number of folks who are disengaged or at work. It's that good. And that's not the world we want to go to.
Molly, you're amazing. Finish this sentence. A thriving culture is...
A thriving culture is where we win as one. People speak without fear and feel heard. Work together to make good ideas great, let go of what doesn't serve us, and create extraordinary value and meaning in life.
Brilliant. Last question. I've got a bonus question. Adrian Gossick is amazing because... Finish that sentence.
He is amazing, and you are amazing because you are the most dynamic duo I know. It is just a spectacular partnership. I love the energy of each of you and both of you, which is very much grounded in the work that I do, is you as an entity, the two of you, really have just nailed it. It's so authentic. It's so powerful. It's so aligned. And really kudos to you. And just a great gift to join both of you today.
Well,
Thanks. It has been a great team over the last 25 plus years, Molly, and we consider you, part of the team as well. We love getting to know you over the last, decade or so. We've known you and really appreciate your work. If anybody hasn't checked out Say It Skillfully, get a copy of the book. Tell us before you leave, how do people connect with you? Where would you send them?
Yeah, so please, sayitskillfully.com is the website. We've got tons of free resources. We have a Say It Skillfully 101 program that's come out, the book, of course, and then a follow on LinkedIn. I'd love to have you engaging in the posts because, this idea of being part of the solution, I find has really resonated. And I think, it's all about how do you help people find the driver for change because people are lumping along and they're fine. And what I have found for professionals, and I would say it's our A and B professionals, our C professionals are just barely hanging on, right? But our folks at the top, they realize that I don't want to be part of the problem. But Molly says it's right. When I'm not speaking up or when I'm doing so in a way that's not skillful, I'm adding to the problem. And I don't want to do that. And so that ability to help yourself, but really to help all those around us, because it is a team sport communication. So the fact that everybody's on the team understands the same principles and can hold each other accountable and help ourselves grow, that's my wish for everyone.
Okay. So Molly has a wonderful gift for all of you that are subscribing and listening in. So Molly, what's the gift?
Well, what I think differentiates folks who are going to really grow is the ability to take action. I mean, frankly, they can watch us all day long. You can watch videos of me all day long, and you're not going to get better. And so I want to encourage folks to download this free mini audiobook, a really short introduction to the me, you, we framework that is the way to have skillful conversations. And so I just encourage you to check it out, put it into practice. Let me know any way that I can help you because I am cheering for you to be who you are and say what needs to be said.
Excellent. And we'll put that link in the show notes. Molly, always a pleasure. You always bring such great energy and practical solutions.
Yeah.
Love going to hockey games with you. We'll do that this fall.
Yes.
So thanks again for being our guest. Thank you for all of you that tuned in to the Culture Works podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.